Import Gaming for the Win Chibisodes is a new series on this channel about cool, interesting, or obscure things related to Japanese gaming that I love, presented in small, bite-sized segments for your convenience. In this inaugural episode, I'll talk about a PlayStation 2 game given out at Japanese McDonald's restaurants at the turn of the millennium, Hudson's card-sized software format that came before the PC Engine's Hew Cards, and a special promotional VHS tape for one of the Dreamcast's greatest titles. You gotta believe, this is Import Gaming for the Win Chibisodes, Episode 1. What time is it? It's Parappa time. Well, not quite like this, but more like this. McDonald's is no stranger when it comes to tie-ins with major video game console manufacturers. If you grew up in the 90s in America, chances are you remember those awesome Super Mario Bros. 3 Happy Meals. Same goes for the Sonic 3 Happy Meals several years later. And if you spend way too much time on the internet like myself, you've gotta be familiar with that bizarre Pakistani Sonic McDonald's commercial. Good lord. The fast food giant has teamed up with Nintendo and Sega on many occasions. But what about Sony and their PlayStation brand? If you were a gaming fan in 2001, you were probably more than aware of one of the chain's biggest video game promotional campaigns ever. Well, as long as you lived in Japan anyway. At that time, PlayStation 2 themed Happy Meals were available at McDonald's for a short while, giving center stage to 4 characters who were sort of the system's mascots of the era. As you've probably already guessed, one of these was Parappa the Rapper. The other 3 were Piposaru, one of the apes from the Sarugetsu series, known as Ape Escape abroad, the Final Fantasy equivalent of a loyal steed, the adorable Chocobo, and what is probably the closest thing to an official mascot the PlayStation ever had, Toro Inoue from the Japan-exclusive Dokoremo Issho series. These characters were used to decorate McDonald's meals and were made into collectible toys and accessories. But who cares about all that, right? What about actual games? So in addition to all that and appropriate to the theme, a free PS2 compatible game disc was also given away with Happy Meals, called the Happy Disc. This promotional CD includes 2 brief game demos and an original short movie. The first demo is of Parappa the Rapper 2, featuring what feels like a beta version of the first level of the game. In the final release, the stage takes place at an establishment named Beard Burger, but since the Happy Disc is a McDonald's giveaway, the restaurant is of course plastered all over with the golden arches. The way the game plays and sounds in the demo is a little rough compared to the finished product. Take a look and listen for yourself.
The ketchup, the mustard, the salt, and the pepper. Pour it on right, guys, we got no extra. You watch the grill, control the flame, guys. Follow the rules, stay productive and wise, and cook those burgers.
Cook those burgers.
Turn the patty over.
Turn the patty over.
Hey, come on and watch them fries. I'm not
Watch
fighting.
them fries.
Better execute sooner.
Better execute sooner.
Productive and wise, and cook those burgers.
Cook those burgers.
Turn the patty over.
Turn the patty over.
Come on and watch them fries. I'm not
Watch
fighting.
them fries.
Better execute sooner.
Better execute sooner.
Bring on the ketchup.
Bring on the ketchup.
Don't forget the cheese.
Don't forget the tea.
The level cuts off abruptly, about 2/3 of the way through unfortunately, and there aren't any extras or options for this demo, other than an explanation of the controls. The second demo in the Happy Disc is for Piposaru 2001, a Japan-only Ape Escape spin-off title. Instead of using a net to capture the Piposaru apes, in this game you're armed with a vacuum cleaner, which is used to suck the pants off of the primates. Yeah, maybe that's why the game never left Japan. The world just wasn't ready. Anyway, the gameplay is simple. You collect all the pants in a level before a timer runs out, you're ranked on your performance, and it's on to the next challenge. Just like with the Parappa demo, the fast food company's connection with the gameplay is merely cosmetic, with McDonald's structures and items occupying the background, and burgers replacing the heart power-ups left by pantless monkeys. And also like the previous demo, the experience ends abruptly, shortly into the 3rd level, and again, there are no additional options outside of an explanation of the controls. This small slice of Piposaru 2001 on offer here is really fun, and I'm interested in picking up the actual game now. The demo did its job nearly 2 decades after the fact. The movie presented in the Happy Disc is about 4.5 minutes long, and stars Japanese television personality and dance choreographer Papaya Suzuki, as well as Piposaru, or at least the guy in a mascot costume. The pair travels to New York City to study up on various dances, consulting with and learning from street performers, cheerleaders, and even members of the world-famous performing arts show, Stomp. At the end of the video, the Piposaru performs his special dance. The Happy Disc is a neat little oddity that fans of Parappa the Rapper, Ape Escape, the PlayStation 2, game demos, or God forbid, McDonald's should have in their collection. Its not for sale label and promotional good status hasn't affected its availabilities, as it's easily found online or in used media shops throughout Japan, and for cheap, around $1 or less. Well worth it for the Piposaru dance alone.
Get you! Get you! Get you! Get you!
The Hew Card is somewhat of a video gaming icon. The sleek, credit card-sized games were designed for use on game developer Hudson Soft and electronics giant NEC's joint-produced PC Engine video game console, repackaged as the TurboGrafx 16 outside of Japan. This little system originally hit the market in 1987 and played host to some real classic games, but quite a few infamous hidden turds too. However, the roots of the software technology go back a bit further than the PC Engine, with Hudson's forerunner to the Hew Card on the MSX, simply named the B Card, an obvious reference to the company's logo. Made commercially available in 1985, the B Card was the result of collaborative R&D between Hudson and the plastics division of the Mitsubishi Group. The B Card is often considered the world's first memory card, with the capacity to store 32 kilobytes of information, and is slightly thinner than a Hew Card, with 32 connector pins rather than 38. MSX B cards were produced in relatively limited numbers, with only 7 games using the format released in Japan, mostly Hudson's own titles, but there were a few more releases outside the country. To play the games, a special adapter called the B-Pack was required, which houses a single card and fits into one of the MSX unit's standard cartridge slots. The artwork on B cards face up in relation to how they're inserted into the system, the opposite of normal PC Engine Hew cards, but similar to SuperGrafx ones. B-Packs were available to purchase separately or bundled with the first B-card title, Yakyukyo, or Baseball Craze. Only 5,000 sets of the latter were produced, though a standalone version of Baseball Craze was also published for retail sale. I wouldn't recommend it without the B-Pack though, because the game kinda sucks. Thankfully, I do have another B-card title that's pretty great, which you've already seen, Takahashi Meijin no Bouken Jima, the classic known worldwide as Adventure Island. The decision to bypass the already established cartridge format of the MSX and create an all-new one to sell on the system might seem strange, but I suppose the reasoning behind it was that it was much cheaper to manufacture cards over cards, with profits from the technology over the long run covering development costs. And I guess for buyers, the slim cards seemed pretty cool and were a lot less bulky than the cartridges and cassette tapes that software was distributed on at the time, even though they came in large boxes like a majority of MSX games. B-cards weren't exclusively used on the MSX, as they were also utilized as telephone cards, and while I have no personal knowledge regarding these, the technology was apparently used in PC-98 series computers and the Atari Portfolio Palm-Top computer, presumably as memory expansion cards. The B-card may be the first of its kind, but it wasn't the only card-based software format of the era, nor on the MSX. Sega's My Cards for use on the Sega SC3000 and SG1000, and later for the Mark III and Master System, were sold starting in 1985, the same year as the B-card. They're very similar to Hudson's proprietary format, and they too were even manufactured by Mitsubishi Plastics. The most noticeable physical differences between the two are the number of pins on each and how they're arranged. Closer in appearance to the Sega My Card is the Astron Soft Card from Electronic Software, an MSX format which was primarily sold in European territories that also required a separate adapter to run. The intentions of the companies behind these card-shaped games all seem to have been the same: save money and provide a compact software solution to gamers. In addition, these formats are all similar in that they never really caught on with consumers and don't seem to have achieved much financial success. Well, except for the Hew Card, of course. But today, for collectors and people who just love games, they're really cool pieces of gaming history that should be considered for collection. B-card games aren't too hard to find, but they are a bit pricey, just like everything related to the MSX.
Ah, a capsule toy. $2 each. I'll have some fun. Oh, this is...
When you see the swirl, orange or blue, what's the first game to pop into your mind? Sonic Adventure? Soul Calibur? Crazy Taxi? Space Channel 5? Skies of Arcadia? Okay, you get the point. There are so many amazing original titles on the Dreamcast that people instantly think of when they see the system's unforgettable logo. But if one game more than any other was to represent the console as a whole, I think it would have to be Shenmue. At the time of its release, it was the most ambitious and costly gaming project ever. And whether you ended up loving it or hating it, you had to admit that it was at the very least an impressive undertaking. When I got the game on Christmas morning in the year 2000 and popped it into my Dreamcast, I was immediately and firmly in the camp of loving it. But you're not here to listen to my personal memories gushing over the game. There's enough of that out there. No, you're here to hear about the videotape you saw in the beginning of this segment. The What's Shenmue VHS tape was given away at Japanese video game retailers to customers who purchased Dreamcast systems or software. I'm not completely sure of the exact numbers and dates, but it seems Sega produced 100,000 of these tapes for the promotion that took place in the middle of 1999, most likely in August, a few months before the game's Japanese release. The tape's running time is just under 30 minutes, with footage and narration going in depth into the many features of the game, such as combat mechanics, the QTE system, and how realistic the game's world and characters are designed. It even goes so far to illustrate realism that it chronicles a day in the life of one of the minor NPCs, cigarette store owner Haru Hirata. Do you remember her? Several scenes from an early build of Shenmue 2 are shown, as well as a few things that were ultimately cut from the game, such as the ability to cycle around Dobuita on a Mamachari bicycle. All in all, the video is put together really well, and I can only imagine just how hyped people who viewed it in the months up to Shenmue's release must have been. I could go on and on about the contents of this VHS tape, but I don't really need to, as it's available for viewing in full online, and with English subtitles. For Shenmue and Dreamcast fans who want a physical copy though, here's some good news, as it's quite a common find online and can be had for just a small fistful of yen. I'm not sure if Shenmue changed RPGs as it proclaims in its trailer, but it surely made an impact on the lives of many who played it. Aside from this videotape, there was another What's Shenmue promo item that's a bit more well known, but maybe I'll talk about that another time. Well, that's all I've got for the first episode of Import Gaming for the Win Chibisodes. I'm hoping to do quite a few more of these kinds of videos in the future, so stay tuned if you liked it. As always, this is Jimmy Hoppa. Thanks for watching and take care.